Step into the light or the shadow it casts. A look in the mirror, stripping the mask. The ego deflects what the id wants to hide, but we find the truth on the edge of the slide. The void isn't empty, it's a canvas of gray, where the ghosts of our bias come out to play. You point at the monster, you point at the screen, but it's only a shadow that's being seen. We sit in the silence where the tension is rife, dissecting the ego with a surgical knife. From the depths of the abyss to the clarity of mind, leaving the noise and the drama behind. High etiquette, held as the ultimate key. This is the Short Burst Podcast TV. See the mirror for what it is. The progression begins now.
And greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day. Enjoying life, living life, loving life. I want to remind everybody, hit that like, share, and subscribe button down there, folks.
Man up, slaves, and hit those buttons, or I'll send ice.
There is a PayPal link down there for anybody who wants to share some love. All is appreciated. Going through some rough times with a recent civil rights violation and other things. Always appreciated. Every little bit helps. And tonight we're talking about, is the First Amendment dying in plain sight? As we review our first video. It's a short. People learning to speak out at the city council meetings and stuff, and they're getting shut down. But the people that are asserting that right are learning that right more and more, and they're going right back and showing that you can't keep shutting them down. Let's take a look at the first one here.
I finished my conversation last time I was here, but these gentlemen over here threatened me with arrest for my First Amendment right. Well, you know, equal treatment under law, right? Thank you. Okay, so today, if y'all threaten to arrest me, make sure you actually have the law that I broke. Go ahead and get GPT chat. This is going to happen in a minute, and I'm going to ask for it before you threaten me with arrest, so don't look stupid. Okay. Men. So in this population, you have roughly 350,000 people. With the 350,000 people, about 70% of them men. 18 years and older is about 120,000 men. If just 0.1% of the men in this town would do what I do, this city council meeting would be overflowing with men.
Absolutely. And I've mentioned this before. I go to the local city council meetings and they've got them held in this little tiny room. And we've got 70,000 population here. Barely anybody goes. We really need to learn how to speak out and use that First Amendment.
Over 200. If there's more than 200 men here, what do you think happens to these cops when they try to illegally arrest us? What would you do? Would you arrest 200 men for telling you, I don't believe in you and you're a piece of shit? Would you? You see how the tides would turn if y'all would just listen? And then you could take those 200 men and do it across the entire United States at every
city council meeting. It's imperative that if you think you have a First Amendment right to speak out, ain't no one else going to speak out for you, because that's your First Amendment right to speak out for yourself. And therefore you must do it yourself.
every city council meeting, and it would take the men, what, 1 hour a month to change the entire world. Men could change the entire world if they just sat up here and did what I did. Thank you for not threatening me for arrest. I appreciate it. Cussing is legal. Right, Mr. Weasley. Mr. Weasley, last time I was here, you said cussing was illegal. You have no statement now? Y'all learn. Thank you for your time. Before I leave, your officer also understands constitutional rights, as he told me, fuck you in the hallway last time I was here. So fuck you and have a nice day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tit for tat. How you doing, Dino?
Doing well, sir.
Good.
Thank you for having me on your panel here. I got some issues with some of this, though, and it refers to what is the people, and I think that's part of a bigger problem with what we're dealing with. Apparently, it, as I've seen it written in certain situations, to be the people, it talks about it's got to be a group of people. Like, so you only got power if you're with a bunch of other people, but that's not the same thing as sovereign power. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that this is starting to touch on that. That guy's talking about how if more people did this, but what he's also, in my opinion, saying is, I don't have any power up here by myself. I need a bunch of other guys here behind me. You know what I mean? And that's not what I think was intended in this
No, no,
republic.
no, not at all. You're absolutely right. It's the voice of the people that's supposed to count, right? So, but again, when it comes to that First Amendment, sometimes you have to let that voice be heard, and you have to be seen in doing it as well. That's what he's talking about. It's coming time that the voice of those that are making conscious um, acknowledgments, and they're obviously an objective, um, and the system still is rebutting it. It's getting closer to that quote revolution time. When do they
Right.
expect
That's
people to
exactly.
rise up in revolution? You don't have to. That's what he's pointing out is the medium in between is getting your voice out there. Start filling these city council meetings, and they'll see that revolution before it comes. And that's when they'll stop, when they see that in fact, by numbers, they are overpowered.
Well, and that's the problem with these courts is it's not recognized that the individual man or woman has the exact same power as whatever hundreds you should get behind you. Just because you don't have them behind you should not be does not just diminish the power you actually have inherent. But it just becomes this issue of if it takes this whatever percentage to tip and show up and be really up, and make change. Um, then the individual man or woman really has no power. So I'm just saying that, but that's not how the words look. So that it doesn't make sense. I'm saying I get where he's
Um,
coming from, and I get the point. I just think that maybe more emphasis on the government side to let them know that yeah, one man or one woman can instruct you and can tell you that you're doing your job wrong. That's totally valid.
Absolutely. That's the power of that voice is it doesn't take the 200 people. Just one resounding and coming right back with full force like he's done. They arrested him last time. They ain't going to arrest him no more. He's going to have his peace now, and he's going to keep going back. That's what I do. I don't go back near as much as I should, but one of these days. So the next one I've got is, can the Supreme Court tell you that you have no right to grow food? When we think about this off-grid living and this freedom lifestyle, this taking back of responsibility and overcoming the comforts and convenience with that sometimes grueling task of physical manual labors. What are the balances there? Who can tell you what you can and can't do if they can't tell you what you can and can't say? And this is Yes and Asa TV. And I did a review on something here not too long ago where I mentioned them. And this one here says Supreme Court rules no right to grow food. Door wide open for small farm closures. And this is from 8 months ago. We're going to take a look at him, see what he's got to say. Speed it up a little bit. Oops, wrong thing. And he's going to talk about a Supreme Court decision in here. We better get to the right window.
Reliable conservative state. It's a beautiful state. My family had a farm in Vermont, and I really wanted to have that farm. The one thing that I can't handle though in Vermont right now is the current state of politics. It's just, you have what you would consider moderates through socialists. You don't really have anybody who's standing up for personal property rights, who's
That's one distinction that is important to understand. Tribe is absolutely correct when he says city council has no duty to listen, only to let the public speak. Okay, they are ultimately the ones that pass the votes behind that curtain. Okay, they don't give a rat's ass what you have to say. It's a corporate charter, and it's business as usual. As Ape says, greetings, friends.
who's taking a stand for farmers. And because of that, they're getting railroaded. They're even getting railroaded by the Vermont State Supreme Court. So it wouldn't surprise you that, the state of Vermont is facing some of the challenges that it is today. But what I'd like to do is just explain to you some of the stuff that's going on. And, some of these farms, I don't necessarily agree with their practices, but what I am seeing here is a pattern unfolding that's going to threaten the very foundation of Vermont and what makes Vermont such a beautiful state. Its agrarian culture has been extremely important throughout the history of Vermont. And the more that we're seeing Vermont,
as is most states. Most states in the U.S. have some sort of agricultural purpose as a commodity to back their state's wealth.
Develop, and we're seeing new people come into Vermont, people settling into Vermont. You're seeing a cultural change that's going to change the landscape that attracted them there, unless there's some understanding into how these things affect the type of people that are there, that have been there. So in May, the Vermont Supreme Court ruled in favor of a county zoning. Basically, what they came up to the conclusion was that the Vermont right to farm laws, the agrarian culture that has built Vermont, the state level laws did not necessarily override the county level laws or the city level laws. Up until this case, I think it was kind of uniformly accepted in Vermont that required agricultural practices, or RAP, and right to farm statutes preempted municipality interference. So ultimately,
Oh shit! And I was muted that whole time. But I was talking about in the statute, your state statutes, when we're talking about this stewardship program that I mentioned, which is what they're confronting here. The USDA and Department of Interior have the stewardship programs. And in Iowa, as I can only assume most states, but I do know some states, they do have stewardship statutes. But in Iowa, all those stewardship protections go back to your agricultural statutes. So when you're doing your research into the agricultural statutes, you're going to be looking for the aspects of stewardship. So you would refine your searches to search terms like stewardship and stuff. You're just going to find them under agriculture.
the court disagreed. This particular case is known as the Essex Junction case. The farmer involved was Jason Struthers. Jason is a resident of Essex Junction. And where he lived is kind of in a rural but urban area. He had a small backyard flock of ducks. Many of you have backyard chickens. So if you're a homesteader in the state of Vermont, this is something that you should find concerning to you. Raising
And Florida, as Tribe says, has watershed provisions. This is under the USDA Department of Interior stewardship program is the watershed. So there's another search term you could use in your states, looking for watershed conservation easements, things like that.
These backyard flocks could easily become a problem now. And your municipality and your county, they can come in and say, look, your property is zoned residential. You just can't do that here anymore. The other thing he was growing was cannabis. I mean, Vermont worked really hard to legalize cannabis and marijuana in 2022. So this guy was growing cannabis. He had a license to grow cannabis. He also was operating this little duck farm. Ducks and cannabis. This is one of the things I love about Vermont, though. So under the court ruling, the court ruled that only farming practices tied to water quality is defined under RAPs, such as manure management and buffer zones. And they're exempt from local zoning regulations, but all other aspects of farming, including structures, livestock numbers, odors, setbacks, and non-RAP cannabis activities, cannabis is not RAP, it's not required agriculture, can be regulated by municipalities. The decision overturned a lower court ruling and shattered the long-standing assumption of Vermont's statewide right to farm policies. So
And when it comes to those watersheds and stuff, it's called riparian rights. Riparian rights, just so you know, another search term.
I think that, and I am going to talk about a win for agricultural producers in Vermont Supreme Court too a little later in this video, but I think that this has opened up the door for a whole lot of other municipalities to come in and shut down homesteads, shut down farms, and they're going to do it. They already are doing it. There's a case in, let's see, where is this? Orleans, Vermont. So in Orleans, Vermont, and I believe that this is actually the town of Barton, sorry. So this is Barton, Vermont in the county.
This is another important topic. When you're looking for land, as we mentioned in a previous video, it's unrestricted land. You want unrestricted land because it's going to fall outside of the zoning ordinances, and so they won't have as many restrictions. You're still going to have your certain restrictions under that conservation easement, that stewardship program, where they're going to help you manage that property as close as possible without being interfering. They're going to let you do it, but make sure you're doing certain aspects, like in your watershedding. You can't destroy the land in trying to do the watershedding, nor can you destroy somebody else's water supply in doing so either. So there's certain restrictions that you're still going to have to follow, and they'll help guide you along those restrictions.
County of Orleans. There's a farmer named Tom Wood who has been operating a animal, livestock, agricultural operation out of basically an old livestock sales barn. It's in the town limits there in Barton, but like I said, this has been a livestock sales barn for a very, very long time, going way back in the 20th century. So he's operating this farming business there. He actually, the property was sold from the original livestock sales barn family to two brothers, I believe, out of Massachusetts, who then simultaneously leased the barn and the 5 acres to this farmer. So, you know, there's going to be some questions in here, some legal questions, and I think that this is actually going to be a tougher case than just what the Supreme Court handed out for a number of different reasons. But he's been operating this farm there since 2016. Now, back in 2019, some people were starting to complain about the smells. They've made a lot of accusations against this farmer for how he keeps up his property and how he handles his animals. I want to note here that, you know, this conversation has gone on since 2019, number one. He was never actually found in violation of any zoning ordinance until 2024, 8 years after he had been farming at this location. And like I said, this isn't somebody who I would probably feature on our Meet My Neighbor series. I've seen some of the pictures of this place. I also recognize that what people are showing in pictures are pictures that they want the public to see. They're trying to.
Right. And so another important aspect of that stewardship program in regards to off-grid living and all that, boondockers specifically, when you're out there camping, it's take everything out with you that you took in with you. So when you go spend 14 days in a tent and you got all this stuff that you brought in with you, including all the garbage wraps and everything, you take all that stuff back out with you. It's the preservation of the nature that already exists there without depleting it, without scarring it, without leaving that manual footprint that's going to destroy it later on.
Create a public perception of this farm. So I think it's unfair to judge from that angle. So what I did was I actually went in and I said, okay, if this guy for all these years has been violating his animals, not taking care of them properly, certainly there would be some sort of follow-up because Vermont actually has some pretty stringent animal cruelty laws. They do have, you know, the right to proper animal husbandry. So it could be a little harder to, you know, to hit up a farmer for how they're raising their animals, but there are standards to animal husbandry. What's a good animal husbandry practice, and what's considered acceptable. And if this guy was doing anything that wasn't acceptable, in all this time of this discussion, they probably would have gone after him in that direction. I'm sure that people have tried to report him. There's just not anything that anybody can pin on him for misoperating his farm. Okay, and in fact, the county has basically said what he is operating is an acceptable agricultural business. It's just in the wrong place. It's in the place that they had rezoned in 2006. So the Orleans.
So it was a rezoning issue that took over an area that allowed for that kind of stuff prior, and now it's just in the wrong place. How is it in the wrong place? You changed the zoning and did so specifically to include that, I'm sure.
Commission sales barn is what it used to be. Okay, it was a livestock sales barn that's been around for a very, very long time, and it has always operated as an agricultural business. This sales barn, this operation of a sales barn, which is an agricultural business, predates any zoning changes that occurred in 2006 by the county. And the county reaffirmed a lot of those changes in 2018. And in 2019, that's when neighbors started saying, hey, we don't like the smell that this guy's putting off. He's a nuisance. And there are farm nuisance laws in Vermont that protect farmers. So what they've done is they've come in there in 2024, 8 years after this guy's been operating, and they've said, hey, look.
So yeah, 2 decades after this guy comes in, they're going to try to do something about it. And it's only because the population has grown and started to encroach that now people are complaining about it smells. Well, you shouldn't have moved so close to it. You knew it was a big farm.
You know what? You can't do this here.
That's one of those things of that comfort and convenience encroaching upon nature. Just a little tip for you guys, in case you didn't know, they have to actually condemn the land of its natural use for their commercial purposes. That's why they put up them parking lots. Commercial purposes. And they condemn the land that they put them on.
Here because it was rezoned back in 2006. Now, the argument that the county is going to try and make, and I think that, number one, this initially failed in 2024. They initially brought up the violation. I think it was in June of 2024. Okay, yeah. So in July of 2024, the zoning violation was issued to the property owners initially, and then in November, the zoning violation was revoked. So they were no longer in violation. But then in December of 2024, they revoted to put the property in violation, $100 a day fine as long as you're operating as a farm. I don't know what happened between December and that point, because in January, the property actually changed hands. The property owners sold the property, the Polacks sold the property to this Woods guy. And so maybe that reset the process. I don't know exactly what happened there, but for whatever reason, nobody was moving forward with these violations at that point in time. Then we had that Supreme Court ruling in May. It wouldn't surprise you that in July, they came out and said, you're in violation of our zoning ordinance, because the state just ruled in our favor on another case. And now we're putting you back in violation. So he argued it, he petitioned it. And on June 23rd, he was supposed to have some sort of hearing. I don't know what the results are of that hearing yet, but you can see how this law has kind of reinvigorated this case. It kind of fell apart for a while, but then as soon.
So we see it's the courts supporting these actions for these commercial purposes. They're supporting the commercial aspects. And when it comes to the sale of that property to somebody else, in that commercial aspect, a lot of times that's seen as a circumvention. And so they just go ahead and they're going to keep moving forward with the suit, but all they do is change the name, just like they changed the ownership by selling the property to somebody else. Now the law just applies to that somebody else that bought the property. They knowingly bought the property, knowing that it was in a suit, or should have known. And if not, the seller has the ultimate duty to know, even though the actual owner's probandi is the buyer has the ultimate duty to know, caveat beware. But it's the seller that is supposed to actually divulge any kind of obverse information that might prevent somebody from buying the land, buying the property.
As the Supreme Court made that decision in May, they turned around 15 days later and said, you're in violation. Shut your farm down. A lot of people could look at this particular case in Vermont and say that it was a non-conforming use that was there before the zoning ever took place. And I started to allude to 2019, 2020, that time frame. And that's because in 2020, there was a news article that came out, and this was in the Barton Chronicle, that zoning officials were looking at a new use for the old sales barn. Doesn't matter if somebody else owns it, they want to look at a new use for it, okay? Because they're envisioning their town the way they want it to be. So, but they, again, no violations were put against this guy until 2024, 4 years after that. So they had been envisioning a change there. They just weren't ready for it yet. People had been complaining, but there wasn't much they could do about it with right to farm laws until the Supreme Court ruling. It kind of cracks me up that a lot of times, you know, you could be sitting on land somewhere, you could have property somewhere, and somebody sitting in an office on the other side of the county is sitting there going, well, I've got plans for this guy's house right here. Yeah, let's do.
Yeah, and that's them pushing that overreach, that absolute overreach of authoritative power in this concept of eminent domain. Again, I remind you folks, they have to condemn the land of its natural use for its commercial purposes.
Something with that. It's kind of like the guy in New Jersey where they just decided, oh, we're going to put affordable housing on that farm. I mean, that's kind of how this worked out. So the farm, the business was an agricultural business. The family that operated the sales barn sold it to the Pollock brothers, who rented it as an agricultural business and then sold it to the agricultural entrepreneur himself in 2025. Technically speaking, there was a period of time, probably when the original barn sale owners stopped operating it as an agricultural business or a sale barn, and the new owners took it over, where there wasn't an operation, but I couldn't actually find that information anywhere. If this building was used to store agricultural goods, if it was used to store farming equipment, if it was used for any of those purposes, then it is a non-conforming use because it was continued to be used for agricultural purposes continuously. But the county could make an argument if they had stopped using it for a period of time, that the non-conforming use was abandoned, and therefore they have the right to apply the new zoning codes that they wanted to apply to the property. But they have to prove.
See, and that's just it. They're trying to use tiny little nuances of this and that to find loopholes and circumvent their actual responsibility and good faith. This is backhanded shit, and people need to be aware. So again, when we're looking in this off-grid movement, people looking for land, be sure to do your diligence and research for the unrestricted lands, well away from these communities that by their population growth might try to find some reason, and therefore, you know, so the basic thing is, if you want to make another nest, just make sure it's not right next to another nest. Get out there in the middle somewhere.
Abandonment. There's also what they call latches laws, where he was able to operate a farm business from 2016 until 2024 at that location without having any notice, nothing sent to him on record saying you can't do this from the county. And I have looked through the records. There is nothing between 2024 and 2016 when he signed a lease agreement with these guys that said you can't do this. You can't operate that business there. And like I said, I don't look at the pictures of this farm and like what I'm seeing in the pictures. I also recognize that I am seeing what people want to show the public, that are making a statement, that are trying to shut this particular farmer down. But looking through the records, I see nothing that says this guy has violated the law in the way that he is treating his animals, the way that he is running his agricultural operation. The only thing I see here is that they're trying to shut him down based on a zoning ordinance, and yet he's on a property that might very well could be, depending on what they had stored in that building or what was going on with the building between the time he took over farming it and the time it shut down as a sales barn. It could very well be that this property is a legal non-conforming use, and that non-conforming use can transfer with ownership in many cases, most cases. But regardless of what we think of this guy or the guy with some ducks and marijuana in his backyard, these implications are going to move quickly across the state of Vermont. There are a lot of people who are moving into these little towns and these little areas.
And like I said, that off-grid movement is growing, and so it's going to be a more of a concern to a greater part of the people. And so it's important to understand, and this isn't just Vermont, you know, it's all across the United States, probably around the world. I'm sure off-grid living is going worldwide, not just here in the United States. So, you know, it's important to understand the aspects of those encroachments of that corporate charter. Get out there amongst the nature, not just right next door to the concrete pads.
Areas. They like agriculture, they like supporting agriculture, just keep it away from them. They don't want to smell the animals, that's gross. They don't want to put up with tractors driving down the road, that's an inconvenience. But they want it, they want the landscape. You know, maybe you could just hay the fields and feed the hay to some livestock somewhere else. Oh, you can't make money doing that? Really? I think that what we're seeing is kind of overall a bad policy in the state of Vermont. I do, there's part of me that looks at this and says, okay, well, they're decentralizing control over property uses. And so, maybe you need to move to a town or move out of a town or go somewhere where you're welcome. I'm not against decentralizing it from the state, not at all, but
not at all. And that's what I'm saying is decentralize yourself from the city. Get out of the city. And no, you can't do it overnight. But maybe, and maybe you're even up in years, but maybe you could start helping the younger ones, support them in doing so. Give them reason to.
I do find it concerning, and I think that what we're going to see here, because of this May ruling, the fact that 15 days after the ruling we already have counties using it against farmers, you're going to start seeing this progress across the state. You're going to start seeing people who are raising backyard flocks, maybe even honeybees, start facing criticism from counties for zoning violations. They can't sell their honey, or they're an agricultural operation. They can't sell their eggs, or they're an agricultural operation. I don't know, maybe this guy was selling his duck eggs and his cannabis as a special blended treat. Point is this is a mindset that is growing across the state of Vermont. And the fact that the fundamental right to farm laws, which are kind of, they used to be considered kind of a right, but they're not considered a right.
And again, this is where I would say he's wrong. Under the USDA and Department of Interior, that stewardship program has the greatest protections to leave that land as it's naturally allowed, and even produce your own crops to help bring back those bees and the pollens and honeys and stuff, and still be able to use what you get from that land in barter exchanges or even sales. There's a supporting network for that. And I think if we instead quit concentrating on trying to fight the bullshit that's going on, instill the positive shit that we can do, I think that's going to be the circumvention, the avoiding of the legal restrictions.
And it's going to allow a lot of these municipalities trying to grow into these boutique little Hallmark towns to just wipe these people out. If you lived in Vermont and you were a homesteader, I would be very concerned about that Supreme Court ruling, and I would try and figure out, get my ducks in a row, no pun intended. So under this ruling, just to give you an idea, towns now have a legal standing to require permits for barns, fencing, and animal enclosures, enforce livestock limits on non-agricultural zones, deny new agricultural uses in neighborhoods previously considered rural by character, limit on-farm businesses like agritourism, workshops, or farm stands. They have the right to limit all of those things because of the state's zoning. Now, there is another case talking about farm stands, and this is
that's this. He's still talking the city only. So again, if you're out in the rural area, away from the city, private land, unrestricted, then you don't have to follow much of the zoning ordinances. And if you're involved with the USDA and Department of Interior as a stewardship, as that status of stewardship, they're going to work with you. As long as you work with them, and ain't nobody going to interfere. They've got the greatest authority.
Something that goes back to the video I did on Oregon a couple days ago. I think this is a rather interesting conversation. There's a case of the Heartland Farm Store. So in June of 2025, the Vermont Supreme Court ruled in favor of SM Farm Shop LLC, which is a family-owned operation tied to the 600-acre Sunnymead Farm in Heartland, allowing the construction of a large farm store near Interstate 91. The decision affirmed that value-added agricultural enterprises, when properly aligned with regional and state planning objectives, can move forward even in the face of local opposition. So this is kind of like almost a complete reversal. Welcome to Vermont. If you want to be confused about legislation, just move to Vermont. The dispute centered on whether the proposed store violated state land use rules under Act 250, particularly the prohibition against strip development and inconsistency with town and regional plans. Despite concerns from Heartland Planning Commission, the Supreme Court held that the project met the
inconsistency with township plans. That's not a violation. It's just inconsistent. We don't like it. That's not what we were thinking. We're thinking something else. It's not consistent with what we want. That's all that is. There is no violations. It's like the smell thing. So what? You have a rendering plant in most big cities. What are you going to do? Shut down the rendering plant? Come on.
the Act 250's criteria and was consistent with Vermont's goal of supporting resource-based rural commerce. They have a goal there, they just don't have a goal when it comes to small farms. I mean, if it's a 600-acre farm, they're going to put up
And that's what it is. It's the small man. So like I said, that rendering plant that's, sitting in the middle of a major city, they don't give a fuck. That's corporate power. That's corporate money. We gotta have that. But the small man, he don't make enough. Oh, and if you're off grid, you don't make nothing for us. You're generally off grid. So yeah, we don't want that. We want you making money for us. We need bitch ass slaves. Excuse my language.
The farm store. That's a great agritourism attraction, right? So it's definitely a contrasting case that almost came out right after the other case came out. We don't want people homesteading or running small agricultural practices out of their backyard. But when it comes to the big guys, and this is something you see in every socialist state, when it comes to the big guys, we're going to support them. And I have nothing against, I mean, a 600-acre farm isn't that big. I have nothing against them. I'm just pointing out the inconsistencies with the Vermont state courts. I think that what happened with this big farm store was actually a big win for agriculture in the state of Vermont. And I think it's going to benefit the community no matter how you look at it. It's a beautiful looking store that they're going to be putting up there. Point is that they have clearly taken a direction or a step to limiting the little guy while allowing the big guys to expand. At the very
It's expanding the commercialism and showing that they've got a plentiful supply, and you can go ahead and just start building up your demand now. It's a way to coddle the masses and make them feel comfortable because daddy's got it under control. We got everything for you. We're working for you. Yeah, right.
part of the heartland issue, the store. It's not.
Daddy doesn't have your interests at hand. Daddy has his commercial interests at hand. And he needs you for that. So he doesn't need your interests, except he needs to know what those interests are so he can control them for his ultimate interests. There really is no better example of altruistic means.
Not a small livestock operation or a backyard homestead. It's a commercial extension of an agricultural enterprise. But I think that all of these cases teach us a little bit about what's going on in Vermont, because in every single case, these local municipalities fought the farmers, whether it was the big 600-acre farm.
And in case you people don't understand that enterprise he's talking about, that's much like a social collectivism. Just so you know.
Farm, or the guy raising marijuana and ducks in his backyard, or the guy trying to raise livestock in an old livestock sales barn. Local municipalities are against the farmers. They don't want those operations going on near their municipalities, which is a dramatic change in the very identity of the state of Vermont. Vermont is losing its cultural identity because of the culture change that's happening within these small towns, within these communities. It's more important for them to develop into small boutique ski towns and stuff. Believe me, where my family's farm was, that was right outside of Ludlow, Vermont. When I grew up, Proctorsville, Vermont, Cavendish, Vermont. Well, Cavendish is still this way, but Proctorsville was just you drove right through without knowing it was there. At Cavendish, at least I could figure out where the center of it kind of was. Now, if you drive through there, Proctorsville's got breweries, it's got all sorts of tourist attractions. Ludlow has exploded into this massive ski town, but that's what they want it to be. They want it to be skiing, outdoor recreation. That's the culture that's moved into these areas. They want to go out to bars and drink. They don't want to go out to a bar and drink and have some food and smell the farm next door. And they love this area because of the preservation of the land, because.
Then don't put your bar on the edge of town.
Vermont has historically been an agrarian society. Funny how that works out. It's not going to be in the future. If you put the farmers out of business that have made Vermont look the way it looks today, you can't expect it to continue with that beauty in the future. What's going to end up happening is it's going to become even more overpopulated. It's going to be more of these rich seed developments going on. But in Vermont, one thing is clear.
And I beg to differ. Because before this land was settled, it was not agrarian. Just saying.
These local zoning boards are becoming gatekeepers, not just of development, but of agricultural practice.
Which is part of the stewardship program. Again, is not necessarily agriculture, but the natural diversity that comes with that land. The life that was condemned by putting parking lots on it, or by making these huge, massive agricultural fields. Do we really need that mass agriculture like that at all? Agreed, there might be some convenience and comfort in having a little overstock. But I think that could be on an independent level as well. Again, according to the natural environment around you and being able to live within those means rather than depending upon imports and exotics.
Taxes in general. Who has the right to a farm stand? Who has the right to have chickens in their backyard? I think it's a tough situation for those of you who live in Vermont. And I would just try and participate as much as you possibly can in everything that says planning meeting. Anyway, guys, I just wanted to share that little bit of information.
So yeah, that was Inasa TV. Again, go check them out. Yes, it is 6 shit. Says make farms or homesteads illegal, then don't call it that. The problem is these people have a foot in each world, getting grants or contracting with the government and complaining when they regulate. Yeah, that's part of what we're talking about here is making sure you do your research, folks. Do not believe me, do not believe the neighbor, do not believe the government, and for crying out loud, do not even believe your own mother. Do your research so you know. We're adults. It's time to stop believing Santa Claus is not real, folks. In times of plenty. And this goes, again, in this Christian society that poses that they're the faithful people of this God. What about the Sabbath to the Mother Earth and letting her rest once every 7 years? What about he takes care of even the smallest of his creations? What makes you think that he wouldn't take care of his greatest? These are things we need to think about, folks. Let me see here. The next one I got, another short. No, it's not a short. Hold on, what is it? Oh, I've got this one here is former Morgan County Water Board member speaks out after hot mic comments. And we're not concerned about the hot mic comments. So we're just going to go right here. We're going to go to the actual issue at hand, which is water zoning. So let's take a listen.
A community member came to speak to the board. Harper tells us the man was asking for the county to provide water services to his home. We reached out to him for comment, but have not heard back yet. This is what he said during the meeting.
Without county water, it's putting our lives on hold. I'm just going to be honest. We can't build, we can't buy. We're sitting there where we're at, making zero progress.
Harper tells us what the man was asking for would cost close to $700,000. Harper said the board offered to set a meter beside the last meter set on his road at his expense. He would be responsible for running the water line from that meter.
$700,000, folks. Wow. $700,000. Can you imagine that? Quarter of a mile. Ridiculous. So this is one of those things, you know. Oh, what are we doing here? Guess I can't do that. So the issue here is, are you going to die of thirst? This is the reality of water privatization. Because it's liquid gold, folks. Water is the liquid gold, and it has extreme values when it's needed extremely. And this is the kind of commercialism that they like. It maintains that control.
To his house, which Harper said was around a quarter of a mile. She said because the board is governed by the Public Safety Commission in Frankfurt, the board is limited in what they can provide. During the meeting, there were moments of back and forth.
That's just for you. like just for one person.
And I'm going to stand up for myself and my wife.
No, we're not saying
I don't
that.
care
We're
if it's
just
1 or
saying that.
100. I'm going to stand up for it.
The man said he wanted to find a solution and he'd be
And that goes to Dean's point earlier with the city council meeting. You know, he's talking about that one voice. She's saying not just for you. We're not going to allocate that kind of money just for you. And he says, well, I'm still going to stand for it because it doesn't matter if it's 1 or 100. But that's technically, in a lot of cases, what it's going to take to get him to spend that kind of money. Otherwise, it's not in their interests.
back. It was after he left that Harper said this.
I don't care if that little gets water so bad.
The board meeting ended after Harper's comments. She tells us that she resigned from the board after the incident.
I know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And she should have. Absolutely. The next one I got is 6 mistakes. There, we got King Mari in back. Can you show me camera, King Mari? King Mari, you there? King Mari, are you there? Speak to me, brother. All right, well, get your camera working. Show me your camera. I'll be going back to this. You're on stage, speaking to the mic, brother. All right, well, we're going to get to the video. You get her fixed, we're here.
So one of the biggest questions that
This one here is 6 mistakes to avoid when buying raw land for a homestead. And this is coming from Better Together Homestead. Better Together Homestead. I'll drop the link down in the chat for everybody. And he's going to tell us 6 mistakes to avoid when buying raw land. And one of those is going to be on that unrestricted land.
I get asked on all of our Shed to House videos and in our Shed to House Facebook group is, I like your house, but how do you actually buy the land to put your house on it? Well, buying the land, that's an easy thing. But whenever you're spending this much money to purchase real estate, you need to make sure that you do not make certain mistakes. And that's what we're talking about today. We're going over the top 6 mistakes to avoid when purchasing raw land for your homestead. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Hey, y'all. My name is Bo Brotherton with Better Together Life and, yes, the Shed to House Facebook group. My family, in 2015, we bought land. We bought 7.5 acres in Central Texas, and we moved our 4 kids and our family.
So he said there you can find him on Facebook as well. Shed to Homestead on Facebook. Shed to Homestead on Facebook, which is another aspect of homesteading is the tiny homes, along with the boondocking, conversion buses and things like that. The movement is growing in all different aspects, and I can only imagine that it's going to converge with small micro communities that are self-sufficient and moving around, mobile, much like our true nature.
Out of the suburbia of Houston, Texas, onto our 7.5 acres. We went from 1/8 of an acre lot onto 7.5 acres, and we converted a shed into our full-time home. But the main reason why we did the Shed to House was so that we could be out here on property in God's creation to homestead, to grow our own food, to have sustainability, to have self-sufficiency, to provide for our family in times, honestly, like right now. And when buying property, you want to make sure that you are not making these top 6 mistakes. So that's what we're going to be going over today. I'm going to be going over a little lesser known things to where I would say these are mistakes that you want to make sure. Now, of course, we're not going to be talking about like water and access or buying property that's going to have a flood or a fire risk. You need to make sure that you have those things. Those are the easy ones, but these are the lesser known mistakes.
Notice he said those are the easy ones because those are the priority ones, the life sustaining and protections and hazards. So your water, the slope of your land, the fire hazards, things like that.
to avoid. Here is number one. All right, so the first mistake that you want to avoid when buying raw land for your homestead is buying land that is too close or too far away from your amenities. So you don't want to buy property that is too close to everything. A lot of this is going on right now. Our world and especially our country is in deep, deep trouble right now. Whenever you're trying to build freedom and liberty, you don't want to be too close to a city, but also you don't want to be too far away from amenities. So you don't want to be too.
And so this guy, he was only a quarter mile away from the line, and yeah, he's going to $700,000. Yeah, that's, is that far enough away? Is it too close? See, the expense there is dependent upon who you're going to depend on for that water supply. So he can cut that expense by doing the off-grid water supply thing, because they're only going to go after the commercial aspect. So if he's truly on unrestricted land, then he should be able to have his own water supply. If he's not, then he's too close. It's not a matter of being able to get that water line from the city to wherever you're at. That's a signal that he's too close.
Far away from things like a grocery store or a restaurant, or some people might need an airport. Or, if you're like us with kids, you want to be able to have activities for your kids. So you want to make sure that you're not too far, but you're also not too close. So if something really were to hit the fan, you're not right there in the mix. This is where you're going to try to get out of suburbia. And what we like to teach is that that perfect spot is that fringe area where you're not in the boonies. You're not all the way out there in the sticks.
Greetings, Mojo Shop 1 says, howdy, much love for all. The truth will set you free. Greetings, brother.
And you're not too close. So it's really that fringe area to where, you probably have anywhere between 20 to 45 minutes away to where you can get to like a Home Depot, where you can get to something a little bit more accessible, to where you have maybe like a Walmart or some kind of grocery store 15 minutes away. All right, number two, the second mistake to avoid is, I messed this up. We did this same thing. We made this mistake. Don't buy one of the first properties that you look at.
Don't buy one of the first properties you look at. This is why they put the candy bars and stuff down on the lower shelves in the grocery stores. Because it's an emotional trigger. So when you see the first property and you think already that you like it, it's an emotional trigger. Don't do that. Make sure you're reasonable and logical, as this man's going to explain. He got lucky.
Real estate wide. It's something that you don't make the first purchase. You don't go into your first house and be like, yep, this is it. I'm emotionally connected to this. I'm emotionally invested. I want to buy this. That's never a good thing. When we were looking at properties in this area, I searched a lot online, but we went and we found a good realtor, and he showed us one property, which really right away, it was not it. We were not really we didn't feel it. It was way too overgrown, and also didn't have the mindset to understand the possibilities that I understand now. But our realtor said, hey, I know that this one didn't work out. Let me show you one more that might be a good fit. We didn't have access. There wasn't a road or anything to it. So it was, you'd have to have a 4-wheel, truck to be able to get up onto the property. But he got us up there with his truck and he drove us. And, in this area, right?
See, when you get these properties, no matter how far away you are, there are certain things that aren't going to be restricted or aren't going to be unrestricted. There's restrictions. So when you have an access way to your land, you have to provide certain drainage requirements when you build that. Because if you don't, it can cause flooding and destruction of other people's property.
Now where our home site, we weren't all that impressed. It was kind of okay. It was not too bad. It's like, hey, let's hop in the truck and let's go look at the back. And it was whenever he showed us the back of our property. That's whenever we fell in love. That's whenever we saw that pasture, whenever we saw all these little thickets, all of this great openness, but then also hidden. And we saw all the beautiful hayfield that is surrounding us. It really got us excited. It got us really pumped that this could be a good property. It was right there in the middle of that 5 to 10 acre range, which those properties do not last long. And I got emotionally invested into the property. I did not want to lose it, and I pulled the trigger and we bought it really fast. I would say don't do that. Luckily, we got lucky. I mean, just straight up like that. We made a good purchase, and our property has increased in value since the very first year that we owned it. So that was a good thing. So we lucked out. It was a really good property. And anytime that I speak to someone who's talking about buying property, I'd say, do not make the mistake of buying the first property that you see, or even the second property. You need to look at 10 plus pieces of property before you put your name down on a dotted line, before you put that earnest money down. You don't know what you don't know until you really get your feet on the dirt and look around. All right.
And that's one thing I'll mention there. I haven't checked this guy out a whole lot, but he does have some kind of investment in land, in purchasing properties. So when you're doing this, again, I urge the importance here is do not make that mistake. You may not get a second chance. It might destroy what you built up to try to achieve. Now, starting all over again is still feasible and very possible, but it's just one of the greatest destructions in something. If you've already built it up, make sure you know what you're doing so it doesn't fall down like a house of cards.
All right. Okay. Number 3. This is so cool. The third mistake that I want you to avoid when buying raw land for your homestead. Oh, I love it. I didn't know that this is what I wanted until I actually saw this property and I was able to really start working on it. This mistake that you have to avoid is buying property without trees. I've become like this. I hate to say that I'm a hippie tree hugger. I don't think that. I just know the benefit of trees. I know the value of trees. I know what my family gets out of trees. I get shade. I live in Texas, y'all. It's 90 degrees and I'm here underneath this tree. I'm going to film.
I live in Iowa, and though there would seem to be plenty of trees, there aren't near as many as there should be with all the massive fields. There are stretches where you might find trees running along the edges of the roads, but for the most part, now most of the forest land is gone. There's still plenty of trees, but the forest land is gone.
All of this video in the shade of my property because I have trees. If you don't have trees, it's going to take you decades to grow what I have and so much money. It's just not going to happen. It's going to take you so much work. And especially in the South, you need that. You need the shade in order to grow your productive trees. You can selectively take out trees. You can always take trees out. Whether I'm going very, very slow about how I'm taking my trees out because we cleared with the dozer and that was just a little bit too fast for me. So I'm really taking my time of really observing my property and saying like, yep, this tree is something that I can use this as a post for a fence or something like that. All of the oaks that I have, I'm not cutting down any of these oaks. They drop nutrition onto the ground that I really can't eat, the acorns, and I turn those acorns into bacon, y'all. There's so much value in trees. And so if you just bought property and it's an open field, yes, you're going to have a little bit more pasture than I do, but you don't have as much options that I do with having my trees right now. I just know that you want some higher percentage of tree cover, especially in the South. But in the North, you're going to want wind cover. You need trees. I'm blabbering here, but trees are so important. Get you some trees.
That's one of the things in Iowa being open fields. One of those places where you will see trees is surrounding the houses. They use them as windshields, protecting them from the wind. So very important. And they have to be well established. Again, if you've got these big, great open fields and that wind's coming across it, I'm telling you what, folks, you don't want to be out there in a big windstorm. Trucks don't. They have places. No. You don't drive. You park that thing, and hopefully it still doesn't get blown over.
Passionate about trees. Okay, maybe I am a hippie tree hugger. I like trees. It's like 10 degrees cooler. Get trees. I just found out that I got to get this garden fence up because my chickens are escaping out of the electric poultry netting. They're coming over here and they're eating my baby tomatoes. I got to get this fence built. Number 4, here we come. All right, number 4. This is a mistake that I'm grateful to say that we did not make, is buying property that is a bad investment. Okay, so yes, I hinted on this for mistake number 2 of don't buying the first property that you've seen. We were able to not make this mistake. We lucked out, so that was a good thing. Now, whenever I say I lucked out, I say that I knew that it was a good investment because I did the research on the property. I really dove deep on just this property. I did a lot of research online and I was looking for something that I was wanted, and I just saw potential. And we realized it after the first year that we owned the property, the value of it started going up. Our taxes started going up too. But whenever we were researching this and talking to our agent, what we realized was, hey, this property was undervalued. We had other people down the road, our county road,
That's another issue, when it comes to the taxes. I recommend people start doing their research on those taxes and stuff too. The bank accounts, the ID and all that. That's all statist stuff, in my opinion. And you can call me a soft sit all you want. But when you do your research and you find out that that's all connected to that commercial system, and That's why they're regulating that stuff. What is the purpose of paying those taxes if you're using your land for a commercial profit, but rather for life sustenance, providing for your own family and living off grid and sustaining yourself without being dependent upon that government. See, that's what the taxes are supposedly for, because you got to depend upon the government, right? Not everybody. Not everybody. How many is the question? How many are going to get up? How long is this movement going to last? How many is it going to pull out into that living off grid lifestyle?
Started building conventional homes. That's what you want. Whether you want to be out in the sticks or not, the good investment is that they were building conventional homes, and that rose the property values, which meant that we had an exit strategy. That's the mistake to avoid, is not having an exit strategy. I can't go into all of the real estate things in this video. You need to find a good real estate agent in your area that you trust and find a piece of property that does that. That is a good investment. All right.
That means doing your research, not having the realtor do the research, but you doing the research. You want to do the research on what kind of slope does the land have? What's the history of water drainage? Is there water source nearby? Can we dig a well to provide our own water? Things like that. All these things to find out whether that's going to be a good investment for you living off the grid, not a commercial investment, but for your own prosperity and taking back your own responsibility and living the good life, free of the regulation.
Number 5, avoid buying property that has a north-facing slope. You really want to be able to figure out the slope and the sun orientation and make sure that you do not have a mistake buying property that is not oriented well. So if you have a slope that is facing north, well, the sun in the winter is going to be over here. So that means that you're not going to get any sun over here. Another mistake that you would want to avoid is in Texas, is that where you're only facing west. That would be like if you just have a big slope and you're just getting beaten down by all of that hot sun in the summer. That's not good. So really, if you're going to have a slope, the best kind of slope to be able to have is facing south or east. Those slopes are going to be best for you because then you'll get the nice gentle sun in the morning, and then also you'll get that good sun in the winter to where it helps you stay warm. All right, y'all, sorry about the big mess. I'm going to be cleaning this up with Kelly and the kids being gone. And
when I was out in the Appalachians hiking with a tent and a backpack, I always tried to find a spot that was on an east-facing hill to make any kind of camp.
I got lumber here for my John Siskovich chicken tractor that I'm building this weekend. Lots to do, cleaning this up. Cannot wait for our United Portable Building office coming, where we can declutter a lot of stuff, where we can declutter all this up and put it in there. But I'm currently talking about the shed to house because the last one, number 6 on this list of mistakes that you have to avoid when buying raw land for your homestead is the government. All right, so I hope I don't get myself.
There we go. The government regulations. Now we're going to talk about that unrestricted land.
In trouble here. That means that you need to buy property that doesn't have any kind of government regulations. And that's something that we were able to do with this property, is that we are unrestricted and we are unincorporated. So that means that we are inside the county, but the city is over here. So we're not.
And the county is the one that assesses the taxes. So if you're outside of the city, you're not being regulated by the city, but he said his taxes went up. But that's a county regulation. So you have to deal with the county zoning ordinance to find out why you're being taxed on property that you're using for your own self-sufficiency and makes no business profits. There's no income. There's no investments. And it's all self-sufficiency.
Actually in the city. We're outside of the
in stewardship.
City limits, which means that it lessens the amount of regulations that we have to deal with on this property. If you buy a piece of property that has government regulations, this is in P.I.G.S.C.U.N.T.S scale of permanence, is very, very unlikely that you are going to get the government to lessen restrictions. So the federal laws are like this much, and then you have your state laws, which are this much, and then you have your county laws, which are this much, and then you have your city laws, which are this much, and then if you want to have an HOA, you're out here, which is insane. I don't understand who in the world, what kind of insane person would, once you know this information, that you actually choose to live in an HOA. I've done it, and I didn't know.
So as he showed you, let me pull up my thing here. As he showed you, the federal was just this small, tight ring of regulations, and those are your strongest regulations. Like I said, if you're in a stewardship program with the federal government and they have to go through the National Forestry Service or something to get jurisdiction, you're probably not going to have too many people, even at the city or county or state levels, messing with you, because you're already in agreement contractually under a stewardship program with the federal government, saying that you're providing protections for the land. That's your use of it. You're not using it agriculturally. You're using it as a stewardship to protect it of its natural bearings. Pure and simple.
How bad it was until I got out here onto my property. Now I will never live in an HOA again. So we have had people in our Shed to House Facebook group that they didn't do the research and know all the laws, and they tried to convert a shed into a house, and they weren't allowed to. They were told that they would have to get rid of it. That all of these just horror stories, you have to do your research. You have to know all of the government regulations. It's part of getting a good real estate agent. This is the big, I'd say this is it. I'll save my most annoying one, the biggest mistake to avoid for last. If it is important to you to have freedom, to have liberty, you need to make sure that you have zero restrictions on that property. Please, please, please make sure that you do not make that last mistake. Get unrestricted land. All right, y'all. I hope that you learned a couple of mistakes to avoid that maybe you hadn't thought of. Let me know down in the comments below of what did I miss. Not access, not water, not any of those obvious ones. I'm talking about a mistake that everybody hasn't thought of, and maybe I'll do another video. Hey, please smash the like button. YouTube algorithm. I forgot to do it in this video. I promise I'll remember the next one. Got to go feed these chickens and the pigs and everybody else. See you on the next one.
And everybody else. And while we're at it, oops. Did it again. And while we're at it, I want to remind everybody, hit the like, share, and subscribe. There's a PayPal link down there for anybody who wants to share some love. And then I've got one last short that I got. Let me pull it up here.
There they are.
Okay, this guy, I just came across him, and I'll do some more reviews on him. I've got him on my list. Watched a few of his videos. This one caught my eye, caught my ear, because this is what we're talking about when we talk about freedom. How free are you? Really, how free are you? If you have to be concerned about all these regulations and everything, how free are you? Do you have that ID in your pocket? Does it have the state name on it first? Is that your daddy? The false patriarch? If you're a good Christian, why aren't you paying tribute to the true patriarch and fulfilling your true duty of being a steward to the land as he asks? So let's take a look.
Well, here we go again. There they are. Another 100 in the brooder, 100 over here on the ground. Another 50 over there. Just look at these little dudes. Look at you guys. And these guys are vicious. I'm just saying it. They are not scared of anything. But
a allodial title. Mojo Shop one says, how about trying to obtain an allodial title? When you understand equity, equity is the possession and use. That's your equity title. There is no written document. So if the state holds title, they have legal title, and that's for entry and control. Now, if they have entry and control, and you have possession and use, and you're in agreement, then they hold that equity or that entry and control title as a matter of protection for you doing your job. It's a recognition that you're doing your job first. If one seeks equity he must first do equity. This is the attitude of coming forth with clean hands. He who seeks equity must come with clean hands. It's the same thing. So the allodial title that everybody talks about, no, you don't need title. Leviticus 25, again, for all you good Christians out there in King James Version of the Scripture says, Leviticus 25, verse 23, the land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine, and ye are strangers and sojourners with me. Verse 24 consequently goes on to tell us our power in possession of that land. In all of the land of your possession, ye shall grant a redemption to the land. You are the redeemers as instructed by those scriptures, all you Christians. So technically, this is what you're supposed to be doing, stewarding the land. And that calls for no title. It calls for honor and paying tribute to the true patriarch, the one that we are strangers and sojourners with. You know, the one that's omnipresent everywhere we go. Isn't that what it says in the Footprints in the Sand poem? And no, I have not. Blessed we handmade. Bless you handmade. I'm sorry. Bless you handmade. Absolutely. I love it. Have you tuned into Joel Salatin? No, I have not. I will check him out though. And Mojo Shop 1 says, right, yes, right on, agrees. Good. All right, so let's get back to this, because he's talking about freedom here.
You know, this is true freedom, guys. As free as you possibly can be in this day and age. Let's be honest, we don't own our homes, we don't own our cars. Yeah, sure, it's paid for, but don't pay those taxes. Don't get that license plate. You know, the road tax, this fee, that fee, sales tax, blah, blah, blah. We literally don't own anything in this world. But when you control where your food is coming from, that's as close to freedom as you can get, guys. I'm going to tell you, I'm a big Second Amendment person. I'm not going to lie.
Absolutely. See, he's a First Amendment person. Yeah, he supports it. And that's that aspect of taking that responsibility. Quit going to the grocery store. Start digging a garden. It doesn't take a whole lot. Once you start, you can lessen your groceries. And the more you lessen your groceries, of course, the more work you're going to be putting in. But the more you're going to appreciate it, because you're going to find out that you're going to have much better tasting food. All the GMOs that are tasteless. When's the last time you had an orange with seeds in it that wasn't dry and rotted almost? No taste. Tastes more like tang than anything.
But this right here, this is more important than that. I'm going to tell you that right now. Go to the grocery store and check out the ingredients lists on the back of 95% better of the food that's in there. I mean, we're not even talking about microplastics and all this kind of stuff. I'm talking about bioengineered this and high fructose corn syrup that, man. Let's be honest. The stuff that we're eating, people talk about, you know, oh, there's this obesity. Americans are lazy. No, Americans are poisoned.
Mm-hmm.
People talk about, you know, oh, there's this obesity. Americans are lazy. No, Americans are poisoned. Talk about, you know, oh, there's this obesity. Americans are lazy. No, Americans are poisoned. And that's what's making everybody fat and unhealthy and sick. So do yourself a favor. If you can do this, you need to get on board and do this. It just is what it is, man. This is big time, important stuff. And you're missing the boat. And look, this didn't happen overnight for me. This didn't happen overnight for us. Me and Amber have been working. This is 10 years in the making just here in North Carolina. And I mean, blood, sweat.
Yeah, this isn't an overnight thing, guys. This is the tortoise and the hare. It's the long game. That's how the tortoise won, because he's gonna go a long time. How long that hare gonna live? you may as well use him as part of the meat wagon. It's long game stuff, folks. This isn't, like I said, you make that first purchase and you find out you fucked up. You just fucked up a long game. Now you got to start the whole game over. So again, it's imperative. Do your research, folks. Do not believe me. Do not believe the neighbor. Do not believe the government. For crying out loud, do not believe your mother. Do your research so you know. Research people that are actually doing it. That's one of the intents of this podcast is not just doing these video reviews, but hopefully one of these days I'll have some people lined up. I can start interviewing these people that are actually doing it, like this guy here. I would love to get a hold of him and do a quick interview on him. Mountain Garden, I think it's called. Mountain Garden. I'll have to double check, but I think it's Mountain Garden is the name of the channel.
Sweat, tears, nonstop. It takes a lot of hard work. But at the end of the day, it's 100% worth it. Y'all stay safe. Stay ready.
So yeah, some things to think about, folks. Bless you, handmade. Says takes a lot of work. I'm 5 years in and still working on it. Glad to have you on board. I don't have the homesteading actual experience, but I've got a lot of experience on farms and things when I was a kid in foster care, Boy Scout, survival techniques. I'm an avid outdoorsman, all kinds of stuff. And I feel better in my nature than having to be conformed to a blue collar or white collar society that says I have to work for a false patriarch. So yeah, 5 years in and still working at it. I'm sure that much time invested in it, you'll probably do it the rest of your life. I hope you the best success, and I hope you keep coming back. Maybe join us on panel one day and tell us more about it. Would love to hear it. So yeah, the First Amendment's dying in plain sight. Supreme Court can tell you that you have no right to grow food, and we know through the evaluation of that liquid gold called water, the privatization of water, you could actually thirst, could cause you to die of thirst if you don't know what you're doing. Who really owns the land? Leviticus 25, verse 23, the land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine, and ye are strangers and sojourners with me in this Christian society. That's the shocking reality. What can restrict that? If you're the one that can redeem it, what are the restrictions on redemption? Are you as free as you can be? Are you as free as that little bird that God takes care of with no worries? He doesn't sow a single seed, yet he reaps everything he needs. So think about this stuff, folks. This is what it's all about. Getting back to our true nature, and that civic duty. What is the civic duty? Is the civic duty the juristic person in a commercial sense, or is it the juristic person in a natural person sense, taking upon that natural duty? Can't wait to get back out there. I've been out doing some night crawler hunting and going down to the local lake, get some bait fish, and heading out to the river, hopefully catching some catfish. Haven't caught the catfish yet, but plenty of crawlers, plenty of bait fish. Even did a fire hack video the other day, getting back into my element. So I hope other people get into their element and see that it's actually your true nature, your natural being. Everything else is a social conditioning to act like part of the machine. On the way out, enjoy the outro again. Same as the intro. Be blessed. I love y'all. But I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back or not. That's to say, I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. That part's on you.
Stay step into the light or the shadow it casts. A look in the mirror, stripping the mask. The ego deflects what the id wants to hide, but we find the truth on the edge of the slide. The void isn't empty, it's a canvas of gray, where the ghosts of our bias come out to play. You point at the monster, you point at the screen, but it's only a shadow that's being seen. We sit in the silence where the tension is rife, dissecting the ego with the surgical knife. From the depths of the abyss to the clarity of mind, leaving the noise and the drama behind. High to catch, held as the ultimate key. This is the Short Burst Podcast TV.